I'd like to call this regular council meeting to order. Councillor Dubanow, before we proceed further, would you provide the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes, Your Worship. We acknowledge that the land upon which we are gathered is a traditional territory of the Adirondack, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe people. We are the beneficiaries of ancient agreements such as the dish with one spoon between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, who agreed to share the abundance of the land through peace, friendship, and mutual respect. The two rural wampum, by which the Haudenosaunee welcomed the settlers and agreed to share the land in mutual respect. And the Treaty of Niagara, considered a fundamental document by First Nations in all future relations and treaties with the British. We recognize that we have a responsibility to be stewards of the land in cooperation and collaboration with Indigenous peoples, not only for one generation, but for all generations to come. We understand that we have an obligation to learn the lessons of our history, educate ourselves about the experiences of Indigenous people, and seek opportunities to heal the wounds that will result in reconciliation with our Indigenous sisters and brothers. Many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people live and work in Fort Erie. We stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. We have the good fortune to live in a land of such abundance, diversity, and beauty. Let's be vigilant in protecting Turtle Island.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Would you all please rise for the invocation?
We meet to serve our community and endeavor to be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Let us be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chambers minds that think and hearts that feel, so that in our deliberations we may display imagination, wisdom, and courage, and the will to do our work for the good of all.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, the roll call, please.
Your Worship, Councillor Noyes sends her regrets, as well as Regional Councillor Encina. All other members of council are present.
Thank you. There is one addendum this evening. There's an additional report, IS 10-2024, that deals with Lindbergh Drive and Burbank Terrace infrastructure improvement, a request for a budget amendment. There's also an attachment to the notice of resignation sent in by Harpreet Bassi on behalf of Niagara Health. And I should point out that under Open House 7.2, the applicants include Susan Ward, not Susan Wood. With respect to announcements, just a very few brief ones. First, I received a letter from the Municipal Law Enforcement Officers Association of Ontario earlier this month advising me that, pursuant to authority provided to them in 1997 by the provincial government, they can grant certification for bylaw enforcement officers who successfully meet the education, job responsibility, and membership requirements of their association. They notified me that Bryce Bailey has now been designated as an intermediate municipal law enforcement officer pursuant to the authority granted to the Municipal Law Enforcement Officers Association of Ontario, and I'd like to congratulate Officer Bryce Bailey, who's been with the town for quite some time and does an excellent job. Second item, I wanted to thank Jeff Hill and his team at Rona for the excellent concert that was held at the Fort Erie Racetrack 2 Saturdays ago, so September the 14th, that a number of bands that played started off by The Trip, then Svengali, then Madrigal, and Escape the Fate. All funds raised were provided to COPE for the food bank and to the Crystal Ridge Dream Center. They had, again, an excellent turnout, a large number of sponsors, and I know that their work is appreciated, and we wish them success in next year, hopefully next year's event or the following year. On Saturday, September the 21st, just passed, the Sports Wall of Fame held its first induction ceremony since 2019. They were scheduled to have one in June of 2020. We all know what happened in March of 2020, and so no ceremony that year or any of the successive years. So on Saturday, rather than a dinner, they started off with a reception and recognized the 1967 Intermediate A hockey team, which was the Ontario champion that year and traveled to New Brunswick to play in the Intermediate Championships for Canada. They didn't win, but It was a fantastic team, and I know growing up, I watched them many, many nights. And they played in the old barn at a time when some of you here may remember that before arenas had glass, particularly small town arenas, they had a wire mesh around the top. And that was what we grew up with, and that's how this team played. And it brought back a lot of memories. Vern Benner and Barry Zimmerman were there. They were the only two team members who were available. We also recognized David Hess, who was a prominent Paralympic athlete, John Gagnon, who was involved in dragon boat racing, Trevor Parks, who currently plays professional hockey in Germany and has done very well there, winning a couple of scoring titles, I believe, and playing on a championship team. Dr. Richard Hewson, who was a high school classmate of mine and a fantastic runner, ended up finishing fourth in, might have been the New York Marathon, but he finished third in the 1979 British Commonwealth Games, and had a number of other extremely significant races. His best marathon run was, and he was the Canadian champion at one time, 2 hours, 13 minutes. And yeah, I don't think some people are allowed to drive their cars that fast. But so he was on hand. He's a prominent professor at the University of Waterloo, and he travels quite a bit. He's retired from his formal job, but he's still associated with an organization that is engaged in medical research. And then finally, we recognize Samuel Johnson, who's an individual who was instrumental in ensuring that the Fort Erie racetrack was set up in Bertie Township at that time. He tried to get a track going in Buffalo, wasn't permitted because in the late 19th century, horse racing was gambling. Gambling was not typically permitted. I tried to get the town of Fort Erie to agree to the racetrack, not permitted. Apparently got the township of Bertie to agree to the racetrack, and the rest is history. That track has now been operating for over 125 years. Couple of other announcements. On Friday, this Friday coming at 6 p.m., the Fort Erie SPCA is opening its new spay and neuter clinic. And finally, on September the 30th, next Monday, starting at 10 a.m., is the Truth and Reconciliation Walk, starting at Mather Arch, and will wend its way along Garrison Road, up Buffalo Road, and eventually to the Fort Erie Native Friendship Center. Those are the announcements. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? There being none, just a couple of upcoming public meetings. One is a public meeting with respect to 1023 Arthur Street. It's a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. There will be a public meeting on October the 7th, 2024, 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. The report with respect to that application will be on our website by Wednesday, 5 p.m., October the 2nd. And there's also an open house with respect to 2649 Stevensville Road and one other unassigned parcel of land with respect to proposed zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision that will be held on Thursday, October the 3rd, 5 p.m. here in the atrium at Town Hall. There is no regional council to report this evening. There are no presentations or delegations, no public meetings. We have a consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? If not, then Councillor Christensen, I understand you have the resolution to move that?
Yes, Your Worship, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that Council approves the consent agenda as recommended.
Are there any questions or comment with respect to the reports or minutes, correspondence contained in the consent agenda? Okay, then I'm going to call the question. This includes the second quarter financial report for 2024 and also a report with respect to the reconstruction of Prospect Point Road North. All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. That then takes us to reports, and Councillor McDermott, you have a resolution with respect to report.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Flagg, that council amends the 2024 capital budget to supplement the Lindbergh Drive and Burbank Terrace Infrastructure Improvements Capital Budget, LIND 20-contract-IST 23T, LIND 20, $300,000, including non-rebatable HST, as identified in Table 3, with the sum of value coming from the Roads Refurbishing Reserve.
Any questions or comments? And Mr. McQueen, my understanding is that this would address, is designed to address concerns expressed by residents with respect to the contours of the ditches on the road.
Through you, I'll have Mr. Walsh maybe speak to some of the concerns that were raised just to verify that.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh.
Yes, Mayor, you're exactly right. This will allow us to complete the project based on what we've said in the past and what we expect and the residents expect for a finished product.
Okay. Councillor McDermott.
Just a couple of questions. Mr. Walsh, when some of these places have these, the rocky things around the drains, so if we're going to be covering the ditches, will those rocks be removed?
Mr. Walsh.
Through you, Mayor, so we're not covering the ditches, we're just making them smaller. We're building swales instead of ditches. I assume you're referring to the rocks adjacent to driveways. We leave those in typically to protect the slopes from erosion. So ideally they would stay. There may be opportunities to remove them.
Councillor McDermott.
Okay. So maybe I'm trying to get at the idea that, well, we were done here, it was going to have it would be consistent pretty much throughout. Is it going to be consistent pretty much throughout? Because, you know, I have residents here tonight, and I know that they've talked to both the mayor and I about this on many, many occasions. And they're trying to get back to a sense of normal. So it's pretty hard to say. It looks so uneven on that street. And, you know, I kind of think residents, when they get a new street and they don't have the advantages of being able to have, you know, gutters and curbs and sidewalks, that their angst shouldn't be compounded by the huge ditches. So maybe you could tell me what the ditch would look like.
Mr. Walsh. You mentioned swales.
Or the
Swales,
swale.
yeah. So through you, Mayor, what we're trying to achieve is something like we've done on Daytona and Lakeside lately, which is what we call a semi-urban cross-section. It has all the typical infrastructure underground, but it's lacking a curb and gutter system. So we address drainage through shallow swales, not ditches. That's what was promised to the residents, and that's what we hope to achieve in the end.
Councillor McDermott.
Well, the end result is, and I guess we won't know until we have an end result, the money's going to be there to fix this. So I just don't want to have a whole new series of complaints if we don't have to. So I'm a little bit discouraged about the rocks, because the rocks have been a bone of contention with 5 or 6 residents of the Lindbergh Drive. However, you know, I guess we'll get the money passed tonight, get on to the project and see where we're at. And hopefully this will, you know, make it a better place. I know how proud these people are of the street. The street's an old street. And the street has a lot of elderly people, similar to this councillor. So I just, I just, I understand their needs, I understand the angst, and I know during these problems, there's neighbors on neighbors. That this, this neighbor isn't happy, this one's upset at this neighbor because they are happy, and we don't want that. That's not the sense of community that we're trying to bring, and we shouldn't bring that to our projects either. So I'm going to put all my trust in the infrastructure department to make sure that this ship's righted, and we'll be visited as we go along if we have to. But Mr. Walsh, you'll monitor this for me in case there's any new problems that come up.
I presume he's going to monitor it for the municipality.
I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will. I just wanted to ask that
Okay,
question.
Councillor McDermott, I would suggest, I know that the two inspectors who've been on this job, the project managers, have been very active. They've dealt with a lot of the residents who are here. I'm going to suggest that they can keep an eye on these rocks that are at the ends of the culverts of the driveways. The change in elevation with respect to the ditches may have a positive impact, but certainly they'll be there, and I'm going to ask the director to ensure that they keep an eye on that as well.
So, Mayor, as I noted, there may be opportunities to remove them.
Yep, okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And just touching on what Councillor McDermott brought up, and I know we have a lot of Lindbergh Drive residents here tonight, and just perhaps maybe Mr. Walsh can expand on this, because I have a swale in my backyard that was put in by the municipality, and it's not what I would call a ditch. It's basically just a little drop in elevation that kind of catches water that travels to the back of my yard, and then throughout the neighborhood, there's various locations where it then goes out into the system and takes it away to the pond. So I'm just wondering if maybe Mr. Walsh, just to help clarify, are we envisioning something similar where it would be like a slight depression in the ground to kind of raise it up, but it wouldn't be the full depth of a ditch? Because in my opinion, a swale is just a kind of a very slight catchment just to carry water away versus a ditch, which is deep and kind of can be unwieldy. So I'm just wondering if maybe we can get some clarification on the definition there.
Mr. Walsh.
Through you, Mayor, as you've described it, Councillor, that's exactly what we're trying for. Something that will promote positive drainage off the road, yet is easy to maintain.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm good, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I had the opportunity earlier in the week to meet the councillor from Ward 1 to drive the area. We went up and down several times, and I was kind of surprised in areas where there was ditching on one side, the opposite had none, and vice versa, kind of going down the road. But I did hear what we've talked about this evening, and I do hope we're trying to get back to as close to like for like in that neighborhood as, where we were before, with the exception of obviously improving where there's drainage issues or could be. But those are just my only comments, and thank you for inviting me to come out and see it firsthand as Chair of Infrastructure.
So to be clear, there were areas of divergence prior to the construction taking place. Some areas there were no ditches, some areas there were ditches, some were small ditches, some were swales, some were a little deeper. So there was a variety from one end to the other, just so that you folks are all aware of that. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the recommendations in the report? None opposed, that is carried. You folks are free to leave if you want, but you're more than welcome to stay and listen to the rest of our meeting. You'll find it stimulating. No clapping and no booing. Okay. That then takes us to item 13, and that is new business. And Councillor Dubanow, you have the resolution with respect to resignations from the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee. This is the start of a new year, and so many of these students have moved on.
Yep, for sure, Your Worship, and I have it right here. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott, that Council accepts the resignations of Anderson Dye, Natalie Whale, Tristan Giaglio, Teslim Fayemi, Sydney Steele, William McCary, from the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, and further, that Council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Any questions or comments? I can advise that the first meeting of this year's Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee was held today. They've got a number of new prospects coming forward, and so these vacancies, I'm sure, will be filled. If there are no questions or comments, all those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to the next resolution, Councillor Flagg, relative to Niagara Health.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. The Council accepts the resignation of Harpreet Bassi, Executive Vice President, Strategy and Communications, Niagara Health, as the Niagara Health representative from the Community Healthcare Services Committee.
Any questions or comments? CAO McQueen, you wanted to make some comments with respect to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair, just some comments that I wanted to make. First, I guess it's a bit unfortunate that we've had one of our important healthcare partners, Niagara Health, make a decision to resign from the committee for community health services. I do want to state, though, that we remain open, will remain open to Niagara Health revisiting that decision and maintaining open dialogue with Niagara Health, because certainly it's council's priority to address health issues in the community. So I think it's important, particularly in my role, to maintain that open dialogue and an open door to continue to advance those discussions to meet some of the community needs. I did review the letter, and I did want to take an opportunity to clarify some of the comments that are in the letter. The letter does infer little movement with that committee and some of the objectives that were outlined in the terms of reference. And so I'm happy to provide a more comprehensive list to the council, but there has been a lot of movement with that committee since the updated terms of reference in 2023. We have had an opportunity to host the family physicians in Fort Erie, bring that group together. That's been really helpful for us to survey the family physicians to understand what the community needs are. We've used that forum, in fact, at the request of Niagara Health, to bring physicians together for them to present information from the Niagara OHT and Niagara Health themselves with the introduction of their new chief of staff. There's been advocacy, as council knows, through AMO, the Rural Ontario Municipal Association, and a number of ongoing issues throughout the year to advocate for a number of different health issues. Council revised the physician recruitment policy with feedback from that group, and so that has achieved some success with 3 physicians being recruited in the last 2 years. And moving forward, council has also looked at other health issues and approved new investments with Reach Niagara for community outreach in the community, and some reinvestments or continuation for youth mental health services through Pathstone and Memory Clinic, just to name a few. So I will be happy to circulate the list of those accomplishments to council by separate memo, but we will be soon launching a resident survey, which was intended to collect some good information from residents about primary care as well. The Niagara Health letter states that they're a strong advocate for increasing access to primary care. I'm hopeful that this advocacy for increasing primary care will be reflected in any of the decisions going forward and being made about the continuation of the urgent care center as requested in council's previous resolution in May. The letter also states that they're actively facilitating working groups with the town of Fort Erie, the Niagara Ontario Health Team, Ontario Health West, Ministry of Health, and a number of other key players for the health portfolio. And so I'm encouraged that they've extended the request to include us in those facilitated workshops. We had previously been excluded, and so I'm encouraged that they've reflected on that decision and extended that invitation. So I do look forward to rejoining that group, and as I mentioned in my earlier comments, remain open that they may revisit the decision, and I'm certainly open to continue dialogue with Niagara Health, as I believe that's an important part of us deciding on and figuring out a model for healthcare for this community.
Thank you very much, Mr. McQueen. Any councillors have any questions? Councillor Christensen first.
No questions. I have.
Comments?
Yes.
Please proceed.
I I'd like to express my disappointment with respect to the contents of the resignation letter. As councillors are aware, and probably the town is aware, this is community health and wellness have been a council priority since 1999-2000, and took on critical importance when, in 2008, when Douglas Memorial was decommissioned and converted to an urgent care centre. Our strategic plan for this term of council not only appoints me as the champion for sustainable and accessible health care, but gives a direct focus on securing essential health care services when the new Niagara Hospital opens in 2028. Moreover, since 2012, this town has spent $2.7 million in health-related services, as well as contributions to our Community Health and Wellness Fund. At a certain point, we committed $3 million to the South Niagara Hospital in good faith, and $150,000 toward Hospice Niagara's hospice center. Mr. McQueen has spoken to the substance of the additional physicians added in this town, the networks that we have built with respect to physician recruitment, the additional programs that we participated in. We created the Community Health Services Committee. I know from 2018, when I was the chair for 4 years, I still sit on as vice chair, and we welcomed that discussion, so I'm somewhat concerned. More concerned that at this point, about 8,000 of our residents are unattached. That means unrostered with a family physician. And the first point of care, our primary care safety net, is the Fort Erie Urgent Care Center, and I believe which is currently operated by the Niagara Health System. And so I'm very disappointed that this decision was made, particularly given that current plan is to close that and withdraw our primary care safety net when the new hospital opens up. This first point of contact provides services that are necessary and beneficial to residents in Fort Erie because of a lack of primary care services. And most of you are aware that this is not unique to Fort Erie. It's just harder in rural and semi-rural communities. We need that first point of contact, and I think we have expressed that in powerful ways over the 6 years that I've been on the Health Services Committee, and particularly since I've been a member of this council. We have seen withdrawals of service significantly beginning in the pandemic, and with hours of care that have shown Niagara Health to be receding from primary care services with the reduction of hours at Fort Erie Urgent Care, as well as in Port Colborne. The concern that I have is that there are funds there that have been doing what this community needs. It may not look the way that like the model that has not yet been created, and which Niagara Health does not clearly define for us, but it is in fact providing our urgent care primary care safety net. The plan to, I think that the plan to, our concern in conveying the concern, in our position in conveying the concerns of our residents about the withdrawal of this primary care safety net has in fact played a part in the letter, and I would like to say that I think these dollars, the dollars at Douglas Memorial, should remain here and should not be redirected to the acute emergency care services at the new hospital site. If the ministry wants to keep the hospital whole in its funding for acute care, emergency hospital care, That should be done with the enhanced hospital funding, not with withdrawing our urgent care dollars. My position, and I believe this council's position, is that we are is clear on the urgent care center. We would like a commitment to continue the operation of the UCC in Fort Erie after the opening of the hospital, or until a viable, sustainable model, alternative primary health care, is in place. Discontinuing the operation of the UCC without a primary care safety net is irresponsible and unacceptable. And I use those terms advisedly and very clearly. That is absolutely my position. Keeping primary care dollars with primary care service delivery makes sense, and this commitment from Niagara Health and the ministry would be consistent with their statement, increasing access to primary care as an integral part of the continuum of care. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Christensen. I appreciate those comments. Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Earlier this year, I tabled a resolution that was unanimously approved by this council and endorsed by Niagara Region and several other municipalities, including Niagara Falls. I won't repeat the motion because everybody knows what it was. It seems like the only response we've received to our reasonable request to maintain our primary care safety net was a clear message from Niagara Health stating that their position that they intend to close the urgent care centers in both Port Colborne and Fort Erie once the new hospital opens. This is not consistent with the original hospital restructuring plan to keep urgent care centers operating in Fort Erie and Port Colborne communities. This is a change in direction, and one that needs to serve our community or its residents who need the access. There have been several changes in the Niagara Health Board membership and to the senior leadership of Niagara Health since we received the original commitment to ensure urgent care center services in Fort Erie. I don't believe that we've received any formal response to our resolution from the ministry or Niagara Health Board. I think we deserve a response, but it means to be more helpful to have a formal discussion with the Niagara Health Board to revisit some of the history, the original hospital plan and commitments that were made, and reiterate the need to maintain their original commitment to operate an urgent care center in our community. It's our primary care safety net, and it's critical for our residents to receive the health care that we need and deserve. I suppose I'm not surprised by the two resignations of the NHS representatives from our health committee, but to imply that there's been a little movement advancing the priorities of our committee is a little bit rich. You know, I like having them there. They give us some of their plans, and whether we like them or not, it's always nice to be able to listen to these plans when they come forward. But at no time was there any meaningful discussion about enhancing primary and community services. They never did anything to encourage that. The thing that bothers me the most is during one of our committee meetings, one of their representatives brought us a map of what Niagara Healthcare looks like. And I had to point out that every single community, with the exception of Fort Erie, was denoted on the map. Now, I wondered if that was a faux pas or a tell, and I believe I asked that question and really did not get an answer that was very acceptable. But you know, since 2008, the Niagara Health System, the former LIN, and the provincial government have been downsizing and depleting our health care. And now in 2024, they're trying to close us again for good. They started with closing our UCC during a major pandemic, abandoning our local health care without real notice. They reduced the hours of the UCC after that. So, you know, they're also the same people that want to be a strong advocate of increasing access to primary care. I suggest they are not walking that walk. And You know, sometimes when I hear things that come out of the NHS, I feel that we should all have our hip waders on because it's totally ridiculous, some of the things that are being said. But I will be proposing a motion this evening, Your Worship.
Just an amendment to the motion that's on the floor?
Yes.
Go ahead.
That council directs the mayor to request to appear as a delegation at an upcoming meeting of the Niagara Health Board to present the history of our healthcare services in Fort Erie, original commitments for urgent care services in the community, and provide rationale for our request for the continuation of urgent care center services in Fort Erie as outlined in the previous resolution adopted May 27th. And don't you worry, Your Worship, should they take that meeting, I'm sure that there is not one councillor that won't have your back at that meeting. We'll be attending that for certain. So that's my say, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. So, Mr. Clerk, I know that you had some heads up about the amendment to this motion, and was the wording, you had some comment about the wording. So that's the wording. Okay, so we have a proposed amendment to the resolution on the floor, which is to accept the resignation. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Dubanow?
Your Worship, can we still speak to the item on hand before going to the motion?
You're going to be able to speak to it regardless.
But it would be speaking to the amendment, not speaking to the
Yeah, if you're going to speak now, you'd be speaking to the amendment, but then we're going to come back after the amendment. Yeah, and you
Thank you.
folks can speak if you wish. Okay, so the amendment that I have, it says, Council directs the mayor to request to appear as a delegation at an upcoming meeting of the Niagara Health Board to present the history of health services in Fort Erie, original commitments for urgent care services in the community, and provide rationale for our request for the continuation of urgent care center services in Fort Erie as outlined in the previous resolution adopted May 27th, 2024. Any questions or comments about that? Okay, the amendment's on the floor. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, so we have, are you finished, Councillor McDermott? Okay, Councillor Lewis, you had your hand up?
Thank you, Your Worship. Some interesting points, and I agree with actually all of the comments from my left. I have taken a few things off of my list of things that I was going to bring up this evening, but I'm going to approach it from a different angle. You know, in my opinion, the fight to save healthcare services at Douglas Memorial Hospital has been a 30-plus year, 3/4 of my life effort by the community. And I know this because I watched it as a resident at a young age and in the 2 terms of being able to sit around this chamber. I really think the focus from the community needs to be in ensuring that we have the needed primary care services in our community, which include diagnostics such as X-ray and ultrasound. And while I appreciate the efforts to save the hospital, you know, certainly my efforts here are to save urgent care and primary care needs in Fort Erie. I'm also a little bit frustrated with the fact that healthcare has never been a mandate issue of municipal government, and now in a second term with almost 2 decades in between, it's almost like Back to the Future, because what was a primary issue of concern for every resident in our community 20 years ago is still the same issue 19 to 20 years later. You know, I understand that the previous council made a commitment for the local share of the new Niagara South Hospital in the amount of $3 million. And at that time, council agreed to that funding, and I believe Niagara Health had outlined a hospital restructuring plan with 3-hospital model and the operation of an urgent care center in Fort Erie and Port Colborne. If that's the case, we have seen that Niagara Health has reduced urgent care services at both sites from 24 hours to 12 hours, and more recently have stated their clear plans to close the urgent care center in Fort Erie when the new Niagara South Hospital opens. So one of my questions, and may not have the answer tonight, is what has changed since the original plans and the commitments were made? I certainly support keeping a promise as long as the rules don't change, but it seems very clearly that over time, those rules have changed, and I certainly don't want to be the one or part of a group of us that revisit our $3 million commitment, but I really think we need to discuss this further at this point, because what the previous council agreed to and the terrain at the time is vastly different than where we are now. And we may very likely need that $3 million that is sitting in an account for other needs within the local community because of what's happened with the change in plan with Niagara Health. I understand that decisions may be driven by political funding, so if the province needs to increase funding to operate the new hospital and keep primary services in Fort Erie, then we should be supporting each other to achieve that goal, and that means Fort Erie and Niagara Health working together for an outcome that benefits the residents of our community and Niagara. I'm hopeful that we can engage the Niagara Health Board in some meaningful discussion on how to either continue operations of urgent care or find a viable and keyword funded alternative to provide primary care to Fort Erie residents and those that choose to visit our community. If we need to advocate for them to remain fully funded by the province to operate a much needed, fully funded by the province, a state-of-the-art hospital for our emergency and acute care needs without relocating our UCC funding, then again, we need that collaborative approach that I can't say we've seen to date to make that happen. The key word missing here is collaboration. And I think tonight with some of the comments from around the horseshoe, there has been work done by our community. It's frustrating to hear that may not be being seen by those within the Niagara Health. It might mean that they have a listening problem. And I even go so far as to say the last consultation, if we want to call it, at the Leisureplex was not a true consultation. It was very much Niagara Health led. It was scripted. It took up the majority of the meeting. There was very little opportunity for the community to talk. We had residents who were turned away from the podium. And to me, I was disappointed that evening because I went there to listen to what the community wanted. And it was unfortunate that Niagara Health clearly did not. And those are certainly my opinions, not necessarily the majority of council's. But I do have another question. So certainly what has changed with the original plan and the commitment that was made? And the other being, there has been a reduction in service at the Douglas Memorial and the Port Colborne site in terms of reducing hours. And I would like to know from Niagara Health, how much cost savings have they seen since reducing the hours there? And where is the money gone, or what was the plan to use that money? And a little bit further from that, I know there was a Douglas Memorial Fund that the hospital used when it was the Douglas Memorial Hospital site. What has happened with that money? How has it been invested, and what are the future plans for that money? So again, I'm not looking for the answer tonight. I very much doubt our CAO has those answers, but I have no doubt that in the soon to near future, someone from Niagara Health Comms will certainly watch this YouTube video, and I fully expect that they will respond to the questions that council has raised.
Councillor Lewis, are you finished?
I am.
That's an expectation that I don't share. I don't think they're going to respond to that at all unless we ask the questions, and then even if we ask the question, we may or may not get an answer. But perhaps you can provide those questions to the CAO, and they can be part of a presentation if we get the opportunity to.
I will, but a non-answer is still an answer. If they choose not to answer, that is still answering the question. Might not be what we
Doesn't
want to
provide us
hear,
any
might
data. Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
but it'll at least be consistent with what I've seen in 30 years of observing.
Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, that's fair enough. And yeah, I'm going to retain the chair. Okay, so the resolution as amended is on the floor. So to accept the resignation from Niagara Health, the representatives on our Healthcare Services Committee, and also that we request a meeting with their board. All those in favor of the resolution as amended? That is unanimous. That then takes us to closed session, and Councillor Lewis, you have the resolution for us to move into closed session.
Moved by myself, and I know it was seconded by Councillor McDermott, that council does now go into closed session to discuss, thank you.
Do you have it?
Yep, I just popped up. To discuss 14.1 closed meeting minutes, July 22nd, 2024, and September the 9th, 2024. 14.2 Community Gaming Development Corporation appointment pursuant to Section 2.392B of the Municipal Act 2021, personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal and local board employees. 14.3 Accessibility Advisory Committee appointments pursuant to Section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act 2001, personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal and local board employees. And 14.4 Affordable Housing Advisory Committee appointments / resignations pursuant to Section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act 2001, personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees.
Questions or comments on that? Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Okay, so we're going to go into closed session, and in my haste to get to closed session, I neglected to ask if there's any other new business or inquiries, so we'll deal with those when we come back from closed session. So we're back in the council chambers, and we have a resolution from Councillor Lewis to rise and reconvene into open session.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. The council does now rise and reconvene from closed session at 7:03 p.m. with report. 14.1, that council approves the closed meeting minutes of September the 9th, 2024. And 14.2, that council defer items 14.2 to the October 7, 2024 meeting. 14.3, that council appoints David Pantano to the Accessibility Advisory Committee for the term ending November the 14th, 2026, or until their successor is appointed. And that 14.4, that council appoints Mark Carl to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee for the term ending November the 14th, 2026, or until their successors is appointed. And further, that staff proceed as directed in closed session to declare a seat vacant for the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and that that council direct staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. I'm going to go back then to new business and inquiries. Councillor Dubanow, did you have an item? Oh, you were just wanting to make sure that I followed proper process. Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Your Worship. The last couple of meetings that we've had, I know that Councillor Insina has been unable to attend. A previous meeting to that, there was discussion about a hazardous waste day that we have had taken away from us here in Fort Erie, and there's very little opportunity for people who may not be able to get to Welland to drop off hazardous waste. And we had discussed having a special day or two assigned, and I'm just wondering whether maybe staff could reach out to whoever at the region would be appropriate and just see where we are with that. Thank you.
Mr. Walsh, is that something that you could do?
Yes, I'll contact the Director of Waste Services at the region.
Thank you, and I'll follow up with Councillor Insina as well. He's on the Public Works Committee, which would be responsible for that. Any other new business or inquiries? Okay, then that takes us to motions. There are none. Any notices of motion? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, I'm going to bring this up for discussion at the Planning and Development Services Subcommittee, but I'd like to give notice of motion just to hedge my bets to establish an assistance program for residents dealing with rat problems, and I'd be bringing that back. I believe our next is it October 21st? Is our next regular council meeting?
October 21st, yep.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship.
And I want to give notice of a motion that will go something along requesting that the provincial funding provided for the operation of the Fort Erie Urgent Care Centre, and I may include the palliative care services as well from Douglas, remain available to Fort Erie for its primary care initiative should Niagara Health close or downgrade the urgent care center at any time in the future. That will be returnable October the 21st as well. And that kind of follows up on comments from Councillor Christensen. Okay, if there are no other notices of motion, are there any bylaws that anyone wishes removed from the package? If not, then Councillor Dubanow, you have the resolution for first and second reading.
Yes, I do, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that the bylaw package containing 94-2024 to approve the final assessment levy for the Savitz Municipal Drain, 95-2024 to amend bylaw 171-2023 regarding the sale of part of the road allowance between concession lot 22 and 23, 96-2024 to adopt a capital asset policy for the town of Fort Erie and repeal bylaw 8909, 97-2024 to exempt certain blocks in Plan 59M519 from part lot control, Village Creek Drive blocks 57, 58, 59, 60, 62, 63, 64, 65, and 70 for the Harbortown Village subdivision by Silvergate Homes, 98-2024 to exempt a certain to exempt a certain part block in Plan 59M506 from part lot control, Royal Ridge Drive, part block 1 in the Royal Ridge subdivision by 2834127 Ontario Limited, 99-2024, to exempt a certain part block in Plan 59M506 from part lot control, Royal Ridge Drive, part of Block 6 in the Royal Ridge subdivision, same owner, and 100-2024, to amend bylaw 11119, being a bylaw to establish a system for administrative penalties, are given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That bylaw package is on the floor for questions or comments. The reason I'm stumbling here is because I noticed yesterday when I was reviewing the bylaws, reference to Village Creek Drive in the Harbor Village subdivision. We have a Village Creek Drive in Stevensville, which is part of the well, that's the point. And the Village Creek Drive it's Village Creek Drive in Stevensville, so. It was there first. The one in Harbortown is under construction now. Yeah, okay, so I wonder if, oh yes, so Ms. Dilwaria, can you maybe just check that, because I'm confident that that's an error, and, yeah. Okay. So, any questions or comments with respect to those bylaws? If not, then I'm going to go to third and final reading, and that would be Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. You're busy tonight. That bylaws 94, 2024 to 100, 2024 inclusive are given third and final reading, be signed by the mayor and the clerk and the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor McDermott, you have first and second reading for the ratification bylaw.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Flagg, that bylaw 101-2024 to confirm the actions of council at its council and committee meeting held on September 9, 2024, and its council meeting held on September 23rd, 2024 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Flagg, do you have the third and final reading?
I do, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott, the bylaw 101-2024 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Just out of curiosity, Councillor Lewis, who seconded your resolution coming out of closed session?
That would be Councillor McDermott.
That's all. So,
I said he was busy.
So, yeah, this is becoming eerily familiar. Okay, scheduling of meetings. Councillor Christensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. On Wednesday, October the 2nd at 10 a.m., the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee will be meeting at the Douglas Heights Senior Center on High Street, and at 5:30 p.m., the Ridgeway BIA will be meeting at the Crystal Ridge branch of the library.
Thank you. And any other meetings? I should have mentioned during my announcements that tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. there's an affordable housing announcement by the Fort Erie Lions with respect to their senior complex that's going up, and that is at 2 o'clock at Douglas Heights. Okay, if there are no other meetings, then Councillor Dubanow, did Councillor McDermott second this motion?
He did, Your Worship.
So, okay, so I'm beginning to understand that there's a pattern here. Last meeting, it was Councillor Christensen. Now it's Councillor McDermott. Can I expect that it'll be Councillor Lewis next meeting? We build no expectations. Okay, Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, Your Worship, moved by myself and seconded by good old Councillor McDermott. The council adjourns at 7:13 PM to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on October 21st, 2024.
All those in favor? That, again, is unanimous. Thank you all.